Hello, I'm Maureen with Playful Pedagogy, and this is video 4 in the Playful Thinking series where we explore Harvard Project Zero's visible thinking routines and how they can make learning more purposeful, more playful, and more powerful for every learner. Today's routine is another go-to of mine. It's called I Used to Think, Now I Think, and it is, in my experience, the reflection routine that makes learning visible to the learners themselves. Not just to me, to them. Let me tell you about a student who taught me exactly why that matters. We had just finished our solar system unit, the one where we watched a film crew drive 7 miles into the Nevada desert just to place planets at true scale, Earth the size of a marble, 7 miles for just our solar system. The one where my learners built their own scale models and wrestled with the beautiful, humbling impossibility of fitting our solar system into 10 meters of classroom space. And at the end of the unit, I asked them to complete an I used to think, now I think reflection. One student looked up from his paper immediately. He had written one thing in the now I think column. I learned nothing. I paused and I looked at him and I said, "You didn't learn anything?" He said, "I already knew this. We studied it. We studied the solar system last year." I said, "Oh, cool. So you'd already seen the video of the desert and the Earth the size of the marble." He looks at me, he goes, "No." And I said, "Oh, great. So you did learn something." "Oh, yeah," he said. "I guess I did learn something." That small, quiet, "oh," was a moment. He wasn't trying to be difficult. He was a confident kid who just hadn't stopped to think about what he had learned, what he actually knew, and what he had learned over the last 4 weeks. And a couple of gentle questions gave him the chance to do that. And he got there. That moment of recognition, "oh, I did learn something," it's worth waiting for. And it is exactly what this routine is designed to produce. So, what is I used to think and now I think? It's a visible thinking routine from Harvard Project Zero's Visible Thinking Framework. And the structure could not be simpler. 2 sentence stems, one before, one after. The space between them is where the learning lives. You can use it at the end of a learning experience. A lesson, a unit, a video, a project, a discussion. You ask learners, what did you think before? What do you think now? What changed? And that gap between those 2 statements is not just a reflection exercise. It's evidence of thinking, of learning, and of growth. I use this routine in 2 different ways, depending on which class I'm with and the context of what we're learning. The first way is whole group. In my English classes, where my English language learners are still acquiring vocabulary, I run it as a shared activity on the board. We build the before thinking together, then we have the learning experience, then we build the after thinking together. It scaffolds beautifully because the learners with less confidence can see and hear their responses, the responses of the more confident classmates. They have a safe entry point. One word counts. Agreeing with someone else counts. The board becomes a shared document of the whole class's thinking. The second way is individual. In my science classes, where learners tend to have stronger language skills, I'm more likely to run it individually. Each learner completing their own before and after. Individual responses give me something that the whole group version can't. Each learner's private before, and what this person specifically brought into the room and what this person specifically took out with them after the lesson. That information is invaluable for planning, for feedback, and occasionally for a quiet, well-timed conversation, like the one I just told you about. So now I want to tell you a story about the other way I will run this. I opened a lesson with my English language learners with a simple question on the board. What do you know or think about flowers? I think flowers are, and it had the sentence frame there to support them. The responses are what you would expect. Beautiful, smell good, part of nature, used as decoration. There's so many colors, important for nature. And from my students that were a bit more advanced, they came up with respiration, pollination, bees, butterflies, and oxygen. Solid, sensible, predictable. That's kind of the point. Then we watched a video. It was all about edible flowers in Thailand, the kind that the cooks used in cooking. They were deep fried and then served to people, not as a decoration, as a food, as flavor, as ingredients in real dishes. The sounds that came from the room were wonderful. Surprise, hunger, confusion, disbelief, learners leaning forward, the face that says, "Wait, really?" Then, after I showed the video a few more times, we built the "now I think" part of the board. That flowers are food. We can eat flowers just like fries. Flowers are even more important, and I would like to discover the taste of flowers in cooking. Flowers are very important for nature and humans, could be good for eating, are delicious, and can be healthy. We can eat flowers just like fries. That one is my favorite. Some learners laughed, others nodded with complete seriousness. Several announced that they wanted to try them. I told them honestly, I wanted to try them too. That shift from beautiful, make good gifts to flowers are food and I want to eat them happened in the space of one video and one conversation. The two boards made it very visible, not just to me, but to the learners. Now, here's something that I want to say clearly because I think it matters. These routines are not self-running. Some visible thinking routines are. You can give it to the students. They can see their own thinking this way, but this one requires a little bit more support. The solar system student didn't arrive at his O moment on his own. I walked over, I asked a question, I waited, I asked another question. The routine created these conditions, but getting there required a teacher in the room, paying attention, willing to ask gently and give him the space to find his own answer. Had I not gone over there, he would have left it with, "I learned nothing," and then he didn't see his own thinking. VTRs are powerful tools, but autopilot is not sufficient. Sometimes learners can use them to see their own thinking independently and brilliantly, but sometimes they need support, reframing, and a will timed "so" from someone who noticed what they wrote and someone who cares. The routine is the scaffold. You are still the builder, and you are important. What makes I used to think, now I think different from other reflection tools is where it places the learner. Most assessment makes the teacher witness the learning. Teachers mark the test, teachers read the essays, teacher decides what the student and the learner understands. But this routine makes the learner the witness. They wrote the before, they complete the after. The gap between the two is something that they can see, hold, and understand within themselves. That is a genuinely different experience and kind of a powerful one. It also does something quietly important. It normalizes change thinking. In many classrooms, changing your mind feels like admitting you were wrong. I used to think, now I think, that reframes it completely. You're supposed to change your mind. It's not a mistake, it's the point. It's what learning looks like from the inside. The student who wrote, "We can eat flowers just like fries," wasn't embarrassed not to have known that before. She was delighted to know it now. That delight, that sense of my thinking has moved, is what this routine makes possible. For those of you who teach with comprehensible input or who are curious about it, this routine has a beautiful built-in language layer. The two frames, I used to think, now I think, are past tense and present tense held side by side. For English language learners, that is rich grammatical territory. Not as a grammar lesson necessarily, but as a natural, meaningful context for using both tenses anchored to something they actually experienced and they actually feel. Used repeatedly across units and subjects, those frames become acquired structures. Learners stop thinking about the grammar, they just use it. The whole group version adds another layer. When a learner with emerging language hears a more confident classmate say, "Now I think flowers are food," they hear the frame modeled correctly in a meaningful context. They can reproduce it on their own, or they hear me model it correctly and reproduce what I have said. One word counts, agreement counts, the board holds space for everyone. And the effective filter? A class making hungry sounds at a video about edible flowers, laughing and eating petals like fries. That is about as low stakes and as joyful as a classroom can get. That is exactly where language learning happens best. I use this routine in English and in science, but it travels. In history, you can use "I used to think this event was, now I think," a simple frame that turns content recall into historical thinking and potentially debate. In literature, after reading, after discussion, after sitting with the character's decision for a while, this routine holds space for a new kind of slow, evolving interpretation that good reading produces. And in any subject with a project or inquiry at its heart, run it at the start and at the end. Save both and ask learners to compare them. Learners are often quietly astonished by how much has shifted in their thinking. So, the playful twist. Every post in this series includes the playful twist, specific practical ideas to bring genuine play into each routine. Here are some for this one. Mix and match. Collect the I used to think responses anonymously before and after the learning experience. Then display the responses alongside them. Let the students, the learners, try to match the befores with the afters. The detective work is genuinely fun and the shifts are often surprising, even to the learners themselves. A gallery walk, where you post individual responses around the room, before on one color of sticky note and after on another. Learners walk the gallery and place a dot next to any now I think that surprised them or that they also share. So you can use 2 different colors. Patterns will emerge. Shared surprises spark conversation and build relationships in classrooms. Another fun one is time capsule. At the start of the unit, collect I used to think responses and seal them literally in an envelope or digitally in a document that no one can edit. At the end of the unit, go ahead and open it and look at the gap between the previous thinking and what learning has occurred. The reveals can be really fun. A turn it around is another one where you ask learners to write an I used to think, now I think about themselves as learners rather than the material that they learned. This one requires trust and a safe classroom culture, but when it works, it's a powerful thing. And finally, let them run it. Once the class knows the routine, they're familiar with it, you can ask your learners to design their own before and after experience for the rest of the class or for a single classmate. What would they show? What would they use to change someone's thinking? That act of designing that shift is a profound thinking exercise, and they will engage with the content a bit more deeply than they might have if they were just filling out a worksheet. So I hope you can find a moment coming up in your classroom where something is about to change. A new unit perhaps, a surprising video, a project reaching its end. And before this experience, ask your learners, what do you think about this? Write it down. Hold on to it. Then teach the unit or give them the video to experience and ask afterwards, now what do you think? Hold the 2 answers side by side. Let your learners see them together. Watch for a shift or a surprise in them or in yourself. And if a student tells you they've learned nothing, smile, ask them a question, give them a moment. The O is usually not too far away. If something unexpected, funny, or genuinely surprising comes out of this, I would love to hear about it in the comments below. And if you found this useful, please like and subscribe. It helps the channel grow. If you want to learn more about this visual thinking routine, check out my website, playfulpedagogy.com. I also have an Instagram, playfulpedagogy.com, so you're welcome. Pop by, share your experiences. I hope your day is full of play, and I'll see you next time for Think, Pair, Share. Bye.